Hey, welcome to another episode of Rock, Paper, Hand Grenades. I'm here with my my bestest buddy, Matt Connerton.
Hi, everyone.
How do you know everyone's listening? It could be just a percentage.
Gary, this program is a global phenomenon. Everyone is watching and listening. We are the #3 show on IPMNation.com, by the way.
We
I don't know
are?
if you know that. Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I know we just got syndicated to Litchfield, right?
Yep, LCTV in Litchfield is starting to carry us as
And-
well.
And Goffstown's carrying us, right? Is Goffstown, didn't you arrange for Goffstown to carry it too?
I don't know for a fact that they're hearing you yet.
Huh?
I don't know for a fact that you're on yet.
Okay,
Oh.
so it's in the works. We
Well,
might not-
anyway, we're just growing like in leaps and bounds. Eventually, I almost gonna, might not make money.
It's like a virus.
It is more like a virus than actually a
An
It's
airborne
like a
virus.
plague.
Yes, I like to think of it as a plague.
What is the new word? They don't call it a plague anymore. It's a pandemic.
Oh yes, yes.
A pandemic. We're
Yes,
the pandemic of TV.
If this show gets on an airplane, it'll be in other countries because it'll just spread like
Yeah,
that.
it will.
Yeah.
It'll take over.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I have this ladies, I have this hand grenade, and that's just in case the show bombs. I just done.
Fair enough.
We've been lucky so far. But if I look nervous, it's because I am.
Okay, so
The
anyway.
door's right over there.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we're doing the show tonight. Kathleen Souza asked me wanted to come on and do a show about one of her bills, which is fetal homicide. And I'm going to let each one of you ladies introduce yourselves. Kathy and I have known each other for 10 years plus, so I'll let you start off and I'll let the viewers know a little bit about yourself, how you got involved in this craziness and.
Okay, you mean the craziness of the present show, or the craziness of the
No,
State
no,
House?
no. That was just a mistake. But I'm talking about before that.
Oh, okay, no. Well, I've been involved in New Hampshire Right to Life since 1973, ever since the day after Roe.
Mm-hmm.
However, I've been involved in the State House since 2000,
Yes,
and I
we
served.
were Frenchmen at 2000.
Yes, we did very well in those days at the State House. It was a very nice State House. You were a complete gentleman and used to take me for coffee in the Speaker's office
That's
all
right.
the time.
Because it was free.
The Speaker, Gene Chandler, would be at his place at the podium, and we could hear all that was going on up in his office and have coffee.
That's right.
And so we used to just escape the tedium of some of the long speeches and go for coffee. So we've been good friends for a long time. And you've been very supportive of my pro-life efforts, and I really, really appreciate that, Gary. And
We were on the same committee. You were on
We were
Fish and
on
Game.
Fish and
That's how I
Game.
got to know you. Okay.
yes, I shared your angst when the lobstermen told us that if we didn't lobster their way with the old way with the crates and everything, that we'd be in big trouble.
We'd get to slash our
When
tires or whatever.
You were afraid that you were going to get shot in the back by an arrow when we didn't vote together to allow Native Americans to hunt at any time and any place throughout the Granite State. We've had some good times, but
Yeah.
and we've had some serious times, and I'm back this term, and I'm happy to be back, and I'm happy to be working with you and the others. We've got a good crew and putting in some good pro-life legislation that we'll get to, and I'm happy to have Ellen, a former colleague in the pro-life movement, as a lobbyist, helping us with the bills now, and I'll let you introduce her.
Alan Cole. You're with Cornerstone Policy Research
That's right.
currently.
That's
And
right.
how did you get involved in all this?
Well, again, it goes back a long ways. I moved up to New Hampshire from Florida in 1982
Mm-hmm.
and joined the New Hampshire Pro-Life Council almost right away, worked with their newsletter for many years, worked with New Hampshire Right to Life,
Mm-hmm.
where Kathy and I have been through some wars together. And in recent years, I'm very happy to have been part of Cornerstone, and I've been their legislative policy director this session.
Okay.
And it's been interesting times after the election last year, as you know.
Yes.
There's been a lot of legislation to clean up messes, so to speak,
Yeah.
from previous legislatures. And Kathy has had very important bills. The parental notification bill that she led the charge on, as you know, has become law.
I think when we were freshmen together, that didn't even pass the first year.
That's
You're right.
Now this is people think of New Hampshire as being so conservative.
No.
but
Well, it's changed a lot.
our freshman year, we had a pretty good Republican majority, and we couldn't get. Now, parental notification is something. If you talk to most people on the streets, and you say, should your 12-year-old be able to get an abortion without your permission? Most people say, no, of course not.
Right. It's common
know?
sense.
It's
yeah.
common sense. It did not even make it. Our first term, it did not even pass.
Why is that? Why do you think that is?
We're a
You-
moral,
well, you guys-
we're a fiscally conservative state, but the moral leadership has been missing in the state for a long time. And it's just been recent that the churches have been more active, and particularly my church, the Catholic Church, has been more active in just the last few years. And we're seeing an emphasis on some of the moral things. Just an example of moral values. Gay marriage was legitimized in the state just a couple of years ago, and just right now we're reversing that.
Possibly.
Possibly, we're on the way, and Ellen can tell you about that. Cornerstone's been part and parcel of that argument. But the moral climate in New Hampshire has not been outstanding at all. Church-going attendance is a very low percentage compared to the rest of the country.
I was surprised to find that out recently, that we're the second lowest church-going state in the country.
You're probably right.
I just heard
yeah.
that statistic the other day, and I was actually very surprised by that. I had
Oh,
no
yeah,
idea.
it's very, very low percentually.
The conservatism is fiscal. People keep track of their pocketbooks.
Right.
And the moral climate has not been a big issue, but it is becoming one now. And so I think we've got more of a chance now to concentrate on some of the important moral issues, and life being one of the main ones, of course, and particularly to us. And so we were able to get parental notification passed.
Yeah, keep the contrast. In 2000, when we were first elected, we couldn't even get parental notification through.
Right.
This year, we not only got it through, we got it through by such a wide margin that we overturned the governor's veto.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just a marginal victory, it
Right.
was a huge
In
victory.
the election, the governor shows some of the dichotomy among the conservatives. Governor Lynch is known to be very, very liberal on the moral issues,
Okay.
on the social issues. But yet, he's elected by a wide margin of conservative people.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't compute. And he vetoed this legislation, and I'm sure he's going to veto more pro-life legislation. So even now, we have to be careful with what we're putting in, because we have to override a veto.
All the years that I've been doing this, first as a volunteer and then recently as a lobbyist for Cornerstone, this has got to be the most exciting year. There are very few watershed elections like 2010 where there was such a huge turnover. And one of the things that Cornerstone needed to do, working with reps, we needed to talk to people who might not normally identify themselves as pro-life and say, okay, stop, let's take a look. Roe is the law of the land. There is nothing that's been submitted to the legislature to overturn that.
Right.
That's intact. We're not talking about that. How about letting parents have a say in this?
How about parental
Yeah,
rights versus...
Yeah.
Let's
Yeah.
stop, take a breath, reason together. And this has been a very interesting time. And in fact, while the House and Senate did override the veto, it was a near thing. It was a near thing.
Yeah. Do you think there is this general perception amongst people who are pro-choice, that they sort of overreact to anything, like the parental notification, and they think that anything that you do, it's like a
Right.
slippery slope, and the
Yes.
next thing you know, you're going to be somehow.
You're
And they think too that if you overturn Roe v. Wade, that abortion automatically becomes outlawed,
Which isn't the
which
case
is
at
not
all.
true. But I think, do you think a lot of people have that perception? Because that's my
I think the
impression.
people who are active in Concord are certainly like that. We
Yeah.
find when we're talking to voters and
Yes.
we're trying to encourage them to contact their reps, it's completely different. But if you're in the hallways in Concord, there are a number of people there speaking to the reps who are very concerned that anything on what I
Right.
would broadly call the life issues
Yeah.
represents the destruction of Roe.
Oh, you're absolutely right. And a prime example would be this fetal homicide bill that Gary spoke of when we started. we are trying to
Why
pass.
why don't you
Okay, fetal homicide.
explain where the origin of this and what it's about?
Okay, about 20 years ago, Carolyn Brady, the wife of former
Representative Carolyn
Senate-
Brady.
Yeah, Representative Carolyn Brady, the wife of former Senate candidate Larry Brady. He's probably most famous for his property up north, Six Gun City. That's the Brady family. And so Carolyn attempted to put in a bill called fetal homicide on behalf of a friend of hers who lost his wife and 7-month preborn daughter in a hit and run on the seacoast. And when the wife and the daughter died, New Hampshire only recognized one death.
Okay.
And he was heartbroken to think that this daughter, at 7 months gestation, wasn't even recognized. There was no penalty for her death. So Representative Carolyn Brady started this long journey to enact legislation.
How many years ago was this again?
20. This was
Wow.
1990.
Okay.
So she started this long, arduous journey. Now, there are 37 states right now that recognize the death of an unborn due to some type of homicide as a crime. 37. New Hampshire is one of the few that does not.
This became very important a few years ago. In Manchester in 2006, there was a drunk driver.
Right.
His name was Joshua Lamy, who struck, struck a car, killing one person, leaving one person badly injured, and causing, the taxi driver was, I think, 7 months pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
Gave birth, the child died 2 weeks later. Now, the drunk driver went to trial, was convicted on a variety of charges, sent to state prison for 40 years, and he appealed on a number of grounds. And his appeal was rejected in all but one. He said he should not have been charged for the death of the baby. And the New Hampshire Supreme Court unanimously said, we hate to say this, but he's right. And the language of that decision, State v. Lamy in 2009, was, if the legislature finds this as unfortunate a result as we do, we hope they will follow the lead of the other states in passing a law that will allow us to impose a penalty for knowingly causing the death. And if you're driving drunk, it's assumed that you know
Right.
you're going to cause damage. So there we are. It's not meant to, it doesn't even address, it addresses choice in the sense that if a woman chooses to carry a child to term, someone who interferes with that needs to be called to account.
Right. I agree. I'm pro-choice, and I agree. I completely agree with that.
But what is happening is the situation you alluded to. Some people, particularly some hardcore pro-abortion reps, are so afraid that once people start thinking of the unborn as a separate being, as a human life,
Right.
then society might somehow change its mind on abortion. They're so afraid of the truth. They're so afraid to face the unborn child
Right.
that they will not allow for the prosecution of its death.
And yet, in those other 37 states,
It
hasn't affected
it
anything.
can't
so
affect anything.
Right.
The wording of the law makes sure that it
Oh,
can't.
the
Right.
law, the
The
bill
law says there's
explicitly
nothing
says.
in this bill that will allow for the prosecution of any action of the mother.
Yeah.
The mother could take the child's life. She is completely immune. And even with that language, some of these reps are so afraid because truth has a way of getting out. And the fact that the unborn is a human life, they don't want to face. And so we have been fighting to pass this bill for 20 years. I think this is the 7th attempt.
Wow.
This is the best drafted bill, though. I have to say that Kathy did her homework. She consulted with other states, consulted with organizations that are umbrellas over this, and selected language and pulled together language that was designed not to get you in the heart, but to put the law in the right place.
Yeah.
It was really very carefully drafted.
I think also kudos go out to Speaker O'Brien, too. I mean, a lot of the stuff getting through is because he's also in favor of it also. So,
Well, yesterday we saw fetal homicide pass the Criminal Justice Committee.
Right.
This was a breakthrough. However, it was amended. Once it goes out of the sponsor's hands, once it left my hands, it's not mine anymore, it's the committee's. And they amended it. They amended it so that no one can be prosecuted for the death of an unborn child under 24 weeks. That's a little sad because we have had a lot of occurrences in the state where women have lost their children at an earlier age.
Okay.
Because of
And-
abuse and stuff
Yeah.
like that.
Right, and, well, there was a case about 4 years ago. The girl's last name, I've never been able to pronounce it, Gnau, or G-N-A-U. The boyfriend didn't want her to be pregnant and purposely killed her and the unborn child, stabbed her.
Wow.
And she was about 3 or 4 months pregnant. We had a case in Manchester where a young woman was working. She was 2.5 months pregnant, and the boyfriend hit her on the head with a hammer.
Oh my God.
And so she and the unborn child died. And the parents in this case, the grandparents rather, wanted the legislature to do something.
Yeah.
And the grandmother was in tears before our committee, decrying the fact that we didn't acknowledge this grandchild that she was looking forward to.
Yeah.
And so now, if the current fetal homicide bill passes in the form that it came out of committee yesterday at 24 weeks, I wonder how I'm going to look these parents and grandparents in the eye, because they're going to think that we have somehow betrayed them. We have passed a bill that doesn't account for their loss.
The beauty of the legislative process, though, is that the Senate, this is going to go on. This is not settled yet.
Yeah.
Now, what, the exception for the 24 weeks, is that consistent with other states? Is that something they
Only
pulled out of the air?
No, one state, New York, is that late. Massachusetts is at viability, which could be earlier.
Yeah.
But Massachusetts has a bill in this year to push the the time that it can be prosecuted back to conception.
Wow.
And there are 17 states, 27 states have it at conception.
Oh, no kidding. Okay.
11 or 12 have it at an old-fashioned term,
Quickening.
quickening, when the mother can feel the baby kicking inside.
Huh.
A few have it at that. But the vast majority have it at conception because that's where it makes sense. And in most cases, there would be no prosecution for the first few weeks because no one's going to know.
Right.
You know,
right.
it will
Yeah.
be moot.
Right.
But New York is the only one that has it at 24.
Okay.
And I would hope that by the time this becomes law, that
Let me ask you, in a strictly pragmatic sense, if that amendment sticks on the House floor and it stays with the 24 weeks,
Right.
does that make it more, have you guys done the head count to know if that makes it that much more
Veto-proof?
Veto-proof.
It does make it more veto-proof.
And
That-
so even though it's not what you want,
Right.
and a lot of people don't understand this when they go into the legislature, they want, they see, like Kathy and I see things as pretty crystal clear a lot of times. And you're over here and you want to be over here, and sometimes you have to accept halfway,
You got to compromise.
You
to
have
get-
to
to get some
accept-
of what you want. Yeah.
because it's still better than where you were.
Right.
That was
Yeah.
something I noticed in parental notification. There were 12 co-sponsors to that bill, and you couldn't get those 12 people to agree on anything else. I really don't think so. It's Cornerstone has found it very important. We need to not just reach out to the people we know are with us. We need to listen to the people who aren't and say, okay, what is your problem?
Right.
What can you tell me why you feel this way about the bill?
What-
Because it is a long,
how can we
gradual
tweak this
process.
to get you on board?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Exactly.
let's talk about this. And it takes a deep breath sometime, especially for something that is so emotional as pregnancy, as the right to life, as the mother. You just have to take a breath, stand back, and say, here's the policy now. here's one that makes sense. What can we do to move from one to the other?
Right. How can we get at least most of the way there?
So, it's,
Which sounds like where you're headed.
Kathy and I have both been at this long enough to know that overnight successes don't happen.
No.
This is, we've been part of this community for a long time, and it matters to us what happens in the long run.
It's
That's why I
gonna
want to
take
build a coalition.
generations. But we are seeing a shift in the young people.
Yes.
We're definitely seeing a shift. And I think it's best shown on January 22nd in the nation's capital at the March for Life.
Yeah, my daughter went down to that a long time ago.
Well, when
My daughter Anna's been involved in the
yes,
pro-life
that's
movement,
right.
too.
She testified as a high school student
remember.
before our state house. Right, she did.
Yeah,
did
she
a
got
nice job.
I forget who the senator was who was the chairman of the committee in the Senate, but she was actually pretty mean to my daughter, who was just at that time like 16,
Wow.
17.
Really?
And usually, as a chairman, I am told, and representatives are told to always be polite, to
Great courtesy.
the greatest amount of courtesy to people, whether or not you agree with them is
Right.
irrelevant.
Right, of
You're
course.
still courteous to people who come in and speak.
Yeah.
And she was actually rude to my daughter, who was
No
at the
kidding.
time only like 16.
Wow.
I mean, the venom
It comes out.
Yeah.
it comes out.
Yeah.
But if you go to the March, or if you'd gone to the March for Life in the 70s, it was mostly older people. I mean,
Okay.
really elderly and middle age. You go now, it's high school and college kids for the most
Yeah,
part.
busloads and busloads
And
from
it
New
is
Hampshire.
so heartening because these kids are becoming educated, they're becoming well-spoken on the issue, and they're taking to heart and they're taking to the sidewalks and to the lobbying efforts. They are going to turn this around for us, and so we're very, very, very heartened that the young people are seeing.
And that's important because when you're doing any kind of a bill, including
Yeah.
this one, you need to have your documentation down, you need to do your homework, but it's not a binder of facts that's really going to lock up the vote. It's person to person. It's one person's story. That makes much more of a difference than all the statistics I could plop down on the table.
Well, I think there's another thing. The fundamental difference between pro-life and pro-choice is somebody who is pro-life believes that at the moment of conception, life starts. And if you believe life starts at that second or that moment in time, then any time after that, if you kill it, it's murder because it's still a human life. Although it's in its rudimentary stages, it's still human life. And that's the whole thing right there. And I think back in the 70s, we were taught in school that the fetus looked like a cotton-picking pollywog for the first, I don't know how many weeks or months, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
But science has proved that that's a total load of bull. And if you go on the internet, you can start seeing pictures of the baby as it's developing, and it's obviously human, and there's nothing even remotely like a pollywog. And I think just the science of it is over time is proving how human it is, and it's not something that can be discarded like human waste as readily as it was in the 70s when we believed the Darwinian ideal was that it was in these different stages of pollywog, and then it lost its tail later on and all this other crap. It's just not true. So science is actually starting to support us also.
And that goes somewhat back to the fetal homicide argument that some people put up against us. They say that at the early stages, there shouldn't be a prosecution as much as for the later stages because the baby is not that well developed and is not able to sustain life outside the womb, that it's just too young. Well, we could make an analogy. If you were driving drunk and you ran over someone in the prime of life versus someone else who was driving drunk and ran over someone who was dying of cancer and only had 2 weeks to live, would there be a difference in prosecution? Because one was only having 2 more weeks to live and the other was in the prime? No, I don't think so. The stage and the quality shouldn't make any difference. The fact that you've taken a life should be the difference. And we're having a hard time making some of the reps understand, that idea, that it's life itself, not what other people define as the quality.
And how often do you have a Supreme Court unanimously pleading with the legislature to fix a law?
Yeah.
That very seldom happens. This was a court that could have legislated itself, and it didn't. It deferred to the legislature and said, look, we are ruling on this man's case based on what you've given us in law. If we think it stinks, if you do too, fix it. That, I think, will
I
reach
just think
some
it's
reps who
unusual
wouldn't
for me
otherwise
to
do it.
agree with the New Hampshire Supreme Court at all, so.
It was a very, very sad case, very sad.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it got to all of them.
And the point that Gary made about the numbers is a good point, because Ellen and I have got to think through the strategy. She is the
Strategery.
lobbyist
Yeah.
for Cornerstone, and
have our first,
and New Hampshire Right to Life is going to have some input into this.
Well, we gotta take a call.
Got
We don't-
our first call of the show. Hi, welcome to Rock, Paper, Hand Grenades. Who's this?
Hi, this is Norm.
Hey, Norm!
Hey, I have a question for the two ladies. I like playing devil's advocate here. Okay, aren't you taking the right of the woman to give her the choice of having the abortion or not by passing a law that they can't do this? And also, there's so many pros and cons that, like with the family planning, Planned Parenthood, that have passed the bill, that they're not supporting the Planned Parenthood, like with birth control pills and stuff like that. Aren't you actually taking the right because of the Christian ways of doing things, and it all falls back on Christianity? Aren't you taking the right of the woman to have the choice to have either carry the child or have an abortion?
Well,
And I don't
Norm?
think that one should be the judge of that woman's right to do so.
Norm,
It's the slippery slope I was referring to.
yeah, he's slippering on his
Oh,
slopes.
I'd be
No-
happy to take it
Oh,
on.
yeah.
Well, I'll just a quick one, Norm. You understand that the legislation they're specifically talking about is when a woman has already chosen to have a child, and say 3 months down the road, somebody beats the crap out of them and the child and they die, shouldn't they be prosecuted for both cases of homicide? So it's when a woman has already chosen, so you're not detracting from her ability to choose.
If the woman is being beaten and she lost a child, she should be prosecuted? Is that what you're
No.
saying?
No. I'm saying, yeah, like, you know how you beat women all the time?
Well, I don't, yeah.
No, you can tell me the truth. So, like, if you were to beat up a woman who had already chosen to have a child, okay, she's already made her choice. She wants to have a little Norm Jr. And about 3 months into it, you get drunk and hit her upside the head, and she dies, and the baby dies. What these ladies are trying to get through the legislature is a bill that would make that a double homicide, because it is her choice to have the kid, but if somebody murders them, they've killed two people, not one.
Oh, okay, then I misunderstood. Oh, okay, yeah, I'll agree with that.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what we're talking about.
Oh, I'm sorry. I
No
come in at the last minute. I apologize.
That's okay,
No, I
Norm.
think it should be, that they should be prosecuted, absolutely.
Good
Okay.
man, good
Yeah.
man.
Okay? Thank you.
All right, thanks, Norm.
So we do, we
Bye-bye.
listen, listen and find
Good
points where we
man.
can agree.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, I think once you start talking about pro-life or pro-choice, people
People
jump
get
to
their backs
conclusion.
Right.
Exactly, yes.
You know?
And what Ellen and I have got to hash out with Right to Life and with Cornerstone and our supporters is what do we do now that we have an imperfect bill? If we wait until after the next election, we might not have to worry about a veto. We're quite sure we'll have a pro-life governor. And,
Possibly.
well, we think we will, Gary. We're thinking positive.
Well, we got Stevens is going to run for it, I
He's
believe.
pro-life.
Yeah, and I know Ovid is going to be on the show the 23rd, and he's pro-life. So
And maybe the
But we don't still,
Cornerstone president might be running, we don't know.
I don't speak on Kevin's
No.
behalf.
Kevin, I talked to Kevin the other day, and he has not made a decision
No,
yet.
but if he does, that's another choice, that would
Okay,
be
but
pro-life.
keep in mind, we still don't know if Governor Lynch is stepping down,
Right.
you can bet your bottom dollar that he's already arranged for somebody that's pretty significant to
Maggie
run.
Hassan is very pro-abortion, and she's running.
Yeah, but that's not,
But you know-
she doesn't have a name.
We have to look at what we have in front of us this week.
What
It's-
can
no,
we
it's a
get
good
done
day's
that
work.
brings
What
us
can we
further
get
to the
done?
goal line?
Next year, we're not only electing another governor, we're electing a legislature again. And as a pragmatic point, we can't depend on every election being as dramatic as the one in 2010.
No.
So I don't think we'll be looking at the same field when we're considering a bill. So I'm looking at this year, this session, and what can be done next spring.
Yeah, because we know just as a matter of course that we're going to have a 30% turnover. Period.
That wouldn't
Yeah.
surprise me.
Usually
Well,
that-
every year, every 2 years we do, because
Yeah.
there are people like Kathy and I who really love going up there for the free coffee and food.
There are a lot,
Lasagna.
there are a lot of
But there's-
freshmen just finding out how much
Lasagna, I
time.
miss
Oh, I
that.
got lasagna. Yeah, I know.
I
Gary
miss
didn't.
that.
Gary didn't.
You
miss
have
the
been hanging
lasagna.
around with me. You're losing out. I'm telling you.
Hey, you're a lobbyist, right? Did you bring any food for Gary?
I did not. Oh dear. Oh dear.
So there's still time. And but that because, like you say, we don't know. I mean, to me, if people look at what's gone on in the legislature in the last year and this year, and get beyond all the stuff that's making people angry, and look at pragmatically what they've done as far as reducing the budget and all the other things that they did that the Democrats just kept spending and taxing, we're going to get reelected.
And it takes
But
a
if they,
coalition.
but it's, that doesn't what it is not what it comes down to, because when it comes down to the election, they're going to pick some radical thing that happened or something somebody said, and that's all you're going to hear
Oh,
in
yeah.
the news
Yeah.
for the 4 weeks before the
And
election.
unfortunately, the press is mainly to blame because they're picking up whenever something unfortunate is done by the Republicans, and they're giving someone like Kathy Sullivan almost unlimited space in the Union Leader
Yeah.
to
But,
boot.
but there's one thing about New Hampshire that makes it different from all the other states, and that's the fact that we have 400 representatives and 24 senators. You can't go to the grocery store without seeing one of your reps. My own town of Merrimack has 8
Yeah, I'm
at
usually
large.
standing outside taking food.
I don't minimize.
you there.
Yeah,
I don't
that was
minimize
me.
what the press can do.
We'll
It can
vote
be-
for food. You saw the sign? Yeah.
It can
yeah.
be very effective. But there's a whole lot more face-to-face, neighbor-to-neighbor conversation. It's not even formal lobbying, it's conversation between candidates and representatives and the people who vote for them. That, I think, can make a big difference. But again, that's without, I don't want to minimize how damaging a press campaign could be. But still, face-to-face talk in New Hampshire still counts for a lot.
Yeah, I mean, you look at, if you've ever, and some of the stuff they let people get away with is amazing. If you've read a few of Ray Buckley's, or ever listened to Ray Buckley, he will always start out with, the Republicans, all they do is cut people down and attack people. And that's exactly what he's doing.
Well, he's attacking the
He's-
Republicans.
and then he goes on to attack them further, and it's like, if you're not aware, if you're not politically aware, you go, oh, they are mean, aren't they? When that's exactly what he is doing,
Right,
and he
right,
does
yeah.
it all the time.
Gary, I'm an independent voter.
Yes.
And so are 1/3 of the registered voters in this state.
Yeah.
As am I.
And all of the attempts by party representatives, whether Republican or Democrat, to try to demonize the other party leaves 1/3 of the electorate going, this has nothing to do with my life.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that both the Democrats and the Republicans should be mindful of that, because there are an awful lot of voters who choose not to affiliate with either party, and they want common sense approaches to problems, whether they be social problems, financial problems. They say, don't tell me what party you're with, tell me what you're going to do.
Yeah, like two weeks ago, and this is one reason I do this show, is because you can actually talk about a subject long enough to actually get the concepts out instead of being a soundbite. And 2 weeks ago, we had Neil Kirk and Claire Ebel on talking about Real ID and privacy issues. And one of the reasons was to show people that, you know, Claire and I are on the opposite side of, I don't know how many issues, but on the privacy issues, she is awesome. And I'm glad she's on my side on that issue for that reason, because you're not always opposed to, it's not always Democrats versus Republicans.
Right.
And most of the Democrats and Republicans get along with each other.
Right.
There's a few of the extremists that, you know, I remember one of the Democrats coming into the ante room this past session, and he just started cussing me out.
Really?
Oh yeah, you people are undoing everything we did for the last 2 years, and he was swearing at me and everything else.
Wow.
Gee.
Did you hit him?
No,
Oh, you should have.
I was pretty happy.
There are state police standing there to make sure these things don't happen.
Oh, okay. I always imagine it being more exciting than it probably
No,
is.
no.
Just the other night, the Manchester delegation was invited to the school board session at City Hall,
Yeah.
and it was Monday night, and so I went, and there were 2 state senators and 4, possibly 5 state reps. That's all. So not too many showed up, and we were the guests, and they had a few questions, and Representative Barbara Shaw had a little bit of information. Representative Will Infantine had a little bit of information for them. And then one of the aldermen, who happens to be going to take a stab at being mayor, started railing about the Manchester delegation. And we're his guests. And he was very upset that we don't seem to do enough for the city of Manchester. Well, there are 36 odd reps from Manchester, and there's 400 reps. So if a bill comes up to allocate school aid, 36 Manchester reps are not going to be able to
That's not even-
persuade
That's
the
not
rest
even-
of the 400 that Manchester should get a disproportionate amount of money.
It's not
No.
even 10%. So
No, well, we believe Manchester should, because Manchester does a lot of services for children that the rest of the state doesn't. They don't have to. We welcome.
but most of that is because the federal government, you bought into, a long time ago, bought into a federal government plan where they were going to take in all these immigrants, and the federal government was going to give you money. You take it in the immigrants, and the money's kind of
No,
slowly petered out.
The mayor has been trying to
Yeah, now.
increase the numbers. No, this has been going on for some years, Gary.
Yeah, but I mean,
But the federal government and the social agencies that are bringing them in have just ignored the wishes.
yeah, but that's what I'm
and-
saying. What I'm getting at is that's a federal issue, not the state's.
Well, it's a state issue in that we have these children here, and we do welcome the children. However, to educate them
Is expensive.
is very expensive. We have 150 languages we have to teach these children in. We have a lot of social skills they have to learn, a lot of dietary needs, a lot of problems. And I think because we're absorbing it in defense of Manchester, I believe that we should get a disproportionate amount of money. However, we don't. And we're not going to convince the other reps that we should. Well, anyway, Mr.
No.
Hebert, the alderman that wants to be mayor, started railing against the lack of benefit that the Manchester delegation is to the city. And what really caught my attention, he said, they're corrosive. Well, I've never been called corrosive before. but,
Oh, I have. You get used to
but
it.
here we're the guests. This isn't in the ante room of the State House. This is the City Hall where we're supposed to be the guests. And
Right.
we're being called corrosive. Well, should we be in any hurry to go back?
Well, this makes me think whether it's education, something like fetal homicide, life issues, or marriage, nobody can pass it on their own.
No.
Whatever happens, we have got to build coalitions, we build
Consensus
alliances.
and-
We bring people in who hadn't looked at the situation of the Lamy case before. And it's going to take bringing in people who hadn't thought about it before. Because if we all go in saying, okay, we've got our little group of people and they're all going to vote that way, we're in this for the long run. And to get a bill that passes and a law that sticks, it means we all work together
I think
and we look at common sense.
I think one of the things that I don't even know exactly how to tackle this, but I've seen it, and to me it's a truth, and to me one of the big truths out there that is not really explored in New Hampshire specifically is that immorality is expensive. Once we can get basically, like you said, a fiscally conservative electorate to understand that as morality breaks down, government grows, and that as morality breaks down, it costs more money, then we'll start getting more and more people on board as to try to, to have like, if you look at Occupy Wall Street, that's a function of big business becoming so immoral that it has lost touch with the people that are the regular people around the country.
We'll grab this call quick. This is Ginger. Hi, Ginger. Welcome to the show.
Hi. Am I talking to Matt?
Yeah, this is Matt.
Hi, Matt. There's a little bit of a difference, and I had to lower my television. With no offense to anybody on the board, especially Kathy Souza, it would appear that some of the real serious issues regarding the immigrants, their education, the nonprofit organizations, and these agencies that foster them here, that they don't do enough to prepare them. They don't do enough to keep them protected from slum landlord mentality. And some of these agencies are in it simply for the money. That's the appearance. And they don't do anything that they're supposed to do morally or legally to protect tenants from lead paint, from slum landlord mentality. And once they're here and they put them in these apartments, that's it. City Hall does not step in to force compliance. So how come that these issues are never really addressed?
Little off topic.
Oh yeah,
I don't
that's
wanna
like
take
that's so far off. Next week, Ginger, call in because next week we've got some people who are running for, I think alderman, but definitely school board, but it's all local stuff.
Well, that's where
And
you're
that would
going
be
to
the
need-
more appropriate.
But the State House has a say in the sense of the constitutional rights of tenants that live here or come here from other countries. There's a lot of state constitutional violations that are part of this problem.
Federal, state, and local would need to work together on that.
Yeah.
And when they sit down in the same room, they're going to have to be open to listening to each other, because if they just walk in with the same ideas that they've had all along,
Okay.
the people Ginger's talking about are not going to be
Thank you,
not gonna be
Ginger.
protected.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Ginger, but we're talking about like fetal homicide and right to life and stuff like that. So it's
Oh, she's gone.
she's gone. But next week, call in because those would be the people that theoretically would be able to affect change.
But you know, Gary, there is this new grievance committee. If a citizen is having trouble with the government, they can file a petition with the new legislative grievance committee.
That's right, that's a new
Through their
committee this year.
legislator.
Right, through
Yeah.
their legislature.
Which would be you.
Right, so she could ask to have a grievance filed if there's a particular family that's not getting the services they're entitled to.
Or the slum landlord, like she
Right,
refers to.
yes.
You
they-
can't, yeah, that's
Yeah.
a very good point.
It's a brand- it's a
Ginger, if you're
brand- it's
still
a-
listening,
It's a brand-new committee, it's a grievance committee.
one of the cool things done this year that's, was considered kind of extremist last year was the introduction of a grievance committee, because under the Constitution, you have the right to have your grievances addressed by your legislators. And in this grievance committee, you can appeal to one of your legislators or even another legislator that you happen to know with a specific problem and try to bring it to that committee, and they can oftentimes help you get through something like that.
I think, were you expecting someone?
Why, you
were
get
you
the text?
expecting another
Yes,
guest?
I
Yeah,
was.
there's somebody outside
Well, they can't find.
waiting for you.
Oh, geez, I gotta go look for him.
Okay. We'll talk amongst ourselves.
Okay.
Can you help me?
Are we running out of time?
Oh, he needs you to go. He needs you to go with
Maybe the
him.
Women's Right to Know Bill's coming up, Ellen. Janine Notter. everything a woman needs to know before undergoing.
Well, there's legislation that's already being filed for next year.
Yeah.
Right now, none of it is in final form. It's called legislative service requests, but we can see one of the state reps, in fact, she's from Merrimack, Janine Notter, is filing one called Women's Right to Know Bill, which is to make sure that someone who chooses an abortion has at least as much information about that procedure
Sure.
as someone undergoing any other medical procedure would have. Who's going to do it?
Right.
What's the complication rate? There will be a number of questions. I'm looking forward to seeing her bill when it's in final form.
Okay.
Parental notification, as you know, has passed. Fetal homicide will continue to be discussed. It's what can we do as a community, knowing that we have differences on the opinion of Roe versus Wade,
Yeah.
on abortion, knowing that we have these differences, what can we do to make the community stronger with these differences in mind?
I'm curious, is there anything else in this bill? I know you were saying it's not a perfect bill because we're talking about compromise and whatnot. Is there anything else in the revised version that you're not happy with, or is it that one thing that we discussed
the
earlier?
24 weeks really sticks out
Yeah.
because I'm neither an attorney nor a legislator, but I can't see standing up in court and defending that 24-week thing. It just seems arbitrary. However, we are still in the middle of the process. So.
There's what? Is that,
Now what?
who is this? Is that?
How you doing, man?
Is this Tiny Tim?
Yeah, how are you?
I'm okay. I wasn't expecting you.
Yeah, I've known Gary for a long time.
Oh.
He asked me to show
Was he in the
up.
bathroom or something? Where are you?
Yeah, he just stepped out for a minute.
Oh my goodness. Well, what are you doing here?
He asked me to come do a song this evening.
Oh, really? Oh.
Yeah.
Do you need something to sing with? I
Yeah.
have a boombox here.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, I just happened to bring it.
Matt, should we be moving the grenade?
So you can move your body.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, you can get. You know, it's all right, Tiny Tim. I showered today. You know, you can
Oh,
move it a little
no.
bit. So, what do you want to sing?
Tiptoe through the
Oh, Tiptoe Through. That's a good one.
That's the only Tiny Tim song I know. I actually happen to have that here. If you want,
Yeah.
If you want, I can play this. And if you want to sing along to this,
Yeah.
all right. Well, here, let's try it. Oh, there it is.
Tiptoe through the tulips by the window is where I'll be. Come tiptoe through the tulips with me. Oh, tiptoe through the garden by the garden is where I'll be. Come tiptoe through the tulips with me.
I love this part. Tiny Tim, that was great. Thank you for singing that for us. And I have to tell you, of all the times I've heard you sing that song over the years, that was by far the most recent.
Oh yeah, I've been dead for a while now.
Yeah, I know. That's why I was surprised to see you.
Well, it's Halloween.
Yeah. So you're
so
like
I
that's
came
well,
around.
well, that's spooky.
Yeah, it's
Spooky,
very
yeah.
spooky. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's great though. That was wonderful. Thank
Yeah.
you. It put a smile, and Kathy there had quite the expression of joy, or maybe it wasn't joy, but that was fun. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. I'll go get Gary now.
Oh, really? Yeah. Is he?
What did you do with him?
Yes, where's Gary?
He's dead.
Oh no. Him too?
Yeah.
Well, that's all right. It's Halloween. He can.
Yeah.
You know, he'll be like a zombie or something.
Yeah, it won't make any difference with him anyway. You won't be able to notice the difference.
Sure. Maybe we can have him reanimated.
Animated to begin with would probably be good with him, I think.
Sure.
you know.
Wow. Ooh, Zig, Tiny
Yeah,
Tim. Wow,
you know,
you're.
I know him pretty good.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Matt. Thanks
Well,
for having me.
thanks for joining us, Tiny Tim, and we'll
Love the shirt.
perhaps we'll see you again sometime. Tiny Tim, ladies and gentlemen. Tiny Tim is leaving the building. He's going to get Gary Hopper, our.
So our host will be back.
He'll be back.
Oh,
yes.
good.
Well, I hope so. If Tiny Tim can find him, I mean, if you know, he could be lost. You know, it's a big building.
We
So-
had a hard time getting in here.
Yeah. Well,
We did.
you know. Yeah.
We were knocking on doors.
Were you really?
I,
we
w-
were.
I was here a few months ago and forgot which floor it was on. So
Did you? Yeah.
I went into youth services,
You went into where?
but they said
Oh.
I didn't qualify.
Oh, really? Yeah. Well, it never hurts to try.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, they can get some good stuff.
Well, you know, I'd
So-
encourage people who are listening, who've always found this sort of thing interesting, look into running for rep.
Yeah.
Every couple of years, there's a big turnover, and one reason is because it's a $100 a year job.
Right.
And a lot of the freshmen are going to discover that as important as the job is, they can't give the kind of time to it they want, and some people will simply choose not to run again.
That's
so
true.
there's always room for this. There's all kinds of things to learn just by, walking up to Concord for a day, take a look around. It might be something that your listeners decide they'd like to do.
Yeah. Absolutely.
That's what the representatives are. They're just folks.
No,
Yeah.
not me.
You don't even. Do you even know what you just missed?
No, I had to go to the restroom.
Oh.
Yeah.
Tiny Tim came and sang a song to us. It was great.
He did?
It was
I
great.
knew he was coming. I didn't know
Yeah.
he was actually going to sing.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah, he's pretty awesome.
yeah. For a dead guy, he's amazing.
Yeah. It's amazing.
But Gary, we do have some more pro-life bills coming in.
Okay, go ahead.
We have a bunch of people, I think, that were really happy to see parental notification pass. And right after it passed, they decided they wanted to sponsor legislation.
Yes, as soon as that was done, we saw
And
action.
I think it gave them some hope for the future.
Impetus.
And these are young
Ooh, good
people
word.
too.
Yeah,
Young,
I know a couple of them.
young reps. And in fact, there's one young lady, Janine Notter.
Yeah.
She has in a women's right to know bill. I think she has 10 women sponsors. Sorry, you can't sponsor it, Gary. Sorry.
I got a wig.
Hold that thought.
But this is going to be a very important bill because so many young women undergo abortion without really knowing what it entails.
No, the suicide. You guys might know, what is the suicide rate of women who actually have that done and later?
I don't know.
That I don't know.
I think it's
Nationwide,
pretty
it's
huge.
significant, but in New Hampshire, we don't know because
They won't keep.
Oh,
there
no,
are
no
no
statistics. No statistics are
But
kept.
this bill will entail some record keeping because the doctors will have to sign that they have provided the women with information. So there will be some record keeping as a side effect of this bill, which will be good. And they will have to give the woman the truth about the status of the unborn child that she's carrying and about any risk to her own health and to her mental health and to whatever suicide statistics are available nationally. So the women will be much better informed if this passes, and I think there'll be many fewer repercussions later on from not being informed.
Yeah, I think the other thing too is people don't realize that you can enter into the legislature in many different capacities. When I first ran, I was still working 40 hours a week, and
You're
was a
not
state.
now?
No, I got let go because my eyes are so bad. They kicked me out.
Oh.
Well, anyway, yeah, I had my humble pie today. I actually had to go file for Social Security for the first time in my life this week, which
I
is
didn't
kind
think you were
of
old enough.
if you're disabled enough. Because they let me go because my eyes are so bad. They believed I was a danger to myself at work. So you can't really go apply for another job as a machinist.
Right.
But anyway, for the first 10 years, I was also working full time. So what I did is my first term specifically, I was on the Fish and Game Committee because they typically only have a dozen average or less bills per session. so your committee responsibilities are less.
Whereas judiciary has
Your
hundreds.
Judiciary has hundreds. So theoretically, if you worked it out right, your actual time requirement is a couple of days a week for the first 6 months of the year.
Yeah. Oh,
So
not bad at all.
it's not horrible. So you
No.
can work it out, and I'll tell you, it is, honestly, is one of the most awesome educations I've ever had. The last 10 years up there. I mean, the first couple of years were kind of mind spinning just
Yeah.
because of so much you got to know and
Sure, sure.
where the free food was,
Right. That's what I would be looking
which
to
is
figure
really
out.
important.
Yeah, obviously.
I have to
Goes
remember to
on.
bring jelly beans and hand them out. I should know better than to
Oh,
come
that's right.
empty-handed.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you just lost a vote. I don't know if you know that.
I'll have to put Kevin on
I
you.
have, I
Turn
don't
Kevin loose.
allow my principals to stand in the way of free food.
That's right.
I just won't do
Good
it.
for you. Good
Yeah.
for you. Yeah. Absolutely.
I don't travel enough with Gary. I don't know where it is. So I'll have
Well,
to.
the
I'll
first
have to
you should have
shadow
known.
him.
You should have
Well-
known from that first term.
You knew where the coffee was.
If he,
I knew-
if he shows you where the food is, that's less for him.
Oh,
No, but I like her.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
No.
We should start to wrap.
But anyway, so next week we got, and I don't even know who they are. Remember we had Ross Terrio, State Representative Ross Terrio, who's running for school board at large.
Yeah.
I called him up because it's almost the election. I thought maybe he'd want to come on.
Yeah.
And he can't because he's going to be at a debate.
That's too
But
bad.
there's
I like
some there's some candidates that he knows that are don't have a lot of money to run for office, who are running for office. He wants them on, so they're coming on next week, and I don't even know who they are.
Really? Oh.
Yeah, so that should be more fun.
Yes. Yes.
Because they're gonna, I can pick on people I don't know,
That's right.
which I always like.
Absolutely.
But so that's what's going on next week. Like I said, on the 23rd of November, we got Oved Lamontaine's coming on. I think the week after this coming week is Ross Terrio's coming on. I forget why,
Okay.
but he wanted to come on, so he's a nice guy. So
Yeah.
I'll let him come on. He's a pretty fun. Do you know him?
no, is Roy Schultz coming on at all?
Who?
We're
Roy
getting,
Schultz, he's running for school board. Very, very good, very
If
conservative.
you want him on next week, tell him to come on.
Really?
I don't know who he is, so.
He's very good.
We're getting the signal.
You
We're in
listen-
this again. Anyway, so thank you, ladies, for
Thanks for
coming this
having us.
evening.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Matt. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks to
Tiny
our
Tim.
Tiny Tim.
Wherever you are.
You know,
Left. Yeah.
yeah, wherever he's gone.
Yeah.
And have a good night. See you next week.